Wow, so oil ripped back above $100 per barrel, and it was the second Trump made it clear that this war might last longer than anybody wanted to believe. And this came at a time where markets have been flirting with this idea for 2 days or so that Hormuz might reopen naturally or whatever that meant, and that a lot of the pain is gone and behind us and is probably not going to get any worse. Then Trump came out and pretty much said that the US would strike Iran extremely hard in the coming weeks, saying allies would need to build up some delayed courage because they've been kind of MIA and they need to take back the strait. And then from those comments alone during yesterday's speech, that wiped out that relief trade that we've had over the past couple days. And then, of course, people came and bought the dip, but it's that assumption underneath it giving the bad feeling that's out there lingering in markets. Futures are still pricing crude falling back into the 80s by July and into the 70s for the rest of the year, which says that markets still want to treat this like something that's temporary. Now, that might be too comfortable because JP Morgan's already kind of talking about stockpiles in developed economies falling to levels that could disrupt the smooth functioning of energy markets. And if Hormuz stays shut long enough, that can create a 14 million barrel per day shortage, which that would turn into a huge problem. Well, a few huge problems, like a liquidity problem or an inventory problem or a demand destruction problem. None of that would be good. And a lot of people's looking at what's going on and they're seeing similarities from 2022 to where, yeah, oil prices fell within this. Here, let me go back a little bit. Yeah, they traded within this range and it was higher than people would like, but it withstood everything going on. But this is where it starts to look different than 2022 because back then, households had more cushion than they have now. Job growth, for example, was running at 3% year over year in December 2022, which that happened to be the fastest pace since 1995. The economy had fresh payroll growth coming out of the pandemic, and then speaking of the pandemic, there was leftover stimulus from all those checks. Everybody felt wealthy. Stock prices were, you could literally buy anything and you made phenomenal returns. Then, not even to mention that balance sheets have been boosted by surging home values, and you got a labor machine that could absorb the pressure at that point in time. So, more jobs created more paychecks, and more paychecks created more spending, and more spending helped keep the whole thing afloat. The whole thing kept going. The circus lived on. But that's not what we got right now in 2026, though. Unemployment, it bottomed out around 2023, and since it's just kind of been drifting higher, though it's been slower, but the economy is adding few, if any, new jobs right now. We're in this low hire, low fire environment. Non farm payroll growth has undershot its longer run average for 2 years now. Now, real wage growth has done a lot of the work instead, averaging around 2% from 2023 to 2025. And that's done its share to keep consumption alive, even with tariffs pushing inflation higher at the margins. Workers had enough leverage from scarcity of talent to outrun some of that pressure, but now that support is beginning to look thinner than it actually looks. And Americans, yeah, they might be a little wealthier on paper than they may have ever been in history, yet sentiment is still in the mud, stuck in the mud. It's like quicksand right now. Pandemic stimulus, that's long over with and gone. Debt levels are climbing. Home prices have plateaued. There's homes sitting on the market much longer, and reduced price adjustments are at super high levels, and inventories piling up, and portfolios as far as stocks are pointing downward in that downward direction as everybody's kind of wondering what is going on. And the spending, the top of the income distribution is carrying a bigger and bigger share of total consumption, which means the economy can keep on showing and printing these decent aggregate spending numbers even while a lot of the people out there feel squeezed. So that split right now is the real story, and that everybody needs to be considering right now. So retail sales for February rose 0.6%. That's the strongest in 8 months, everybody. The control group rose 0.5%. That's better than expected. People spent more money on a larger ticket item like cars and then clothing, and they're still dining out at restaurants in the period. So that's saying that the consumer held up better than feared. But those numbers were collected before the war in Iran pushed gas prices sharply higher. And since the conflict began, gas prices have risen nearly 20%. And you got economists estimating that if those prices stay elevated for longer, that Americans could lose close to 1% of what they have left to spend. So the data is giving you one picture, and real life is about to give you another. And you can already kind of see where this pass through's starting to happen in real time. So look at this. Amazon is imposing a 3.5% fuel charge to independent merchants using its warehouses and delivery network starting April 17th. We've seen something similar already kind of take trend with UPS and FedEx having already raised fuel surcharges, and the Postal Service is adding its first ever fuel surcharge. It's at an 8% fee on packages shipped from April 26th to January 17th. So when everybody's kind of wondering, all right, Joel, we get it, gas prices are high, there's a Middle East conflict going on, and all you're talking about is political stuff. I promise I'm not trying to be some political channel and turn into all of that. But what we're talking about right now is how an oil shock moves through the economy when households feel less resilient, dependent, even considering the fact that some of the data is still showing resilient. So it's showing up in shipping costs and logistics costs and checkout prices and all of those little costs that people notice, all on top of those price pressures at the pump right now, the gas pump. And that's happening while the industry side of the economy is sending a weird message. So ISM manufacturing rose to 52.7% in March. That's the best reading since August 2022. S&P Global, they also showed growth accelerating. Production improved as companies worked through prior orders, which, yeah, all of that kind of sounds encouraging until you look a little further. So let me move myself out of the way. We're going to scroll down right here and we're going to go to the little category chart right here. And right there in orange, you see new orders, right? New orders slowed for the third straight month. You see employment contracted for 30th consecutive month. Prices jumped to 3-year highs. So factories are producing more in the present while demand indicators are going the wrong way and inflation pressure is beginning to build again. So, I mean, it's not looking like something you'd call a healthy expansion. That's companies clearing the backlog while getting less confident about what's coming next. The labor market has some tension. We had initial jobless claims come out for last week. And really, what that's showing is jobless claims fell to 202,000, which looks calm. That's a historically low number. We're not really ticking up. Continuing claims rose to 1.841 million, but the 4 week average is still the lowest since September 2024. Then we got ADP data. ADP data came in showing that private payrolls came in at 62,000 private sector jobs added in March. That was better than expected, with hiring concentrated in education and health services. So that's been the trend. So if you stop there and just consider jobless claims and ADP data, everything's looking pretty good. You can tell yourself employment is bending, not breaking. Then Challenger comes in. I always feel like this is the bearish piece. Every time it comes out, we read it and it's like the worst of all. Challenger comes out and reminds you where the cuts are happening. So layoffs, we see they rose 25% in March to 60,620. AI related cutting led all of the reasons. Technology announced 18,720 job cuts in March and 52,050 in the first quarter of the year. That's the part a lot of people keep underestimating because the labor market is not collapsing in some broad, obvious way. Rather, it's thinning out in very specific places while the aggregate numbers still look manageable if you even describe it that way. AI, if you think about it, is where the money's going. We know that. And it's also where job risk is also building at the exact same time. And these are the exactly the kinds of jobs that help define middle and upper middle class stability over the last cycle. So when people say the economy looks fine, well, they're not entirely wrong. They're also not really describing the same economy or even reality that most households are living in right now. And policy is starting to reflect some of that same strain. I say that because the Trump administration is changing how it applies tariffs on a certain something, being metals. So that'll be steel, aluminum, copper, products containing those metals. So products made entirely of those metals, they still face that 50% tariff that they've had all along. Products like washing machines with significant metal content now get a 25% tariff. So a flat tariff of 25%. Goods with less than 15% of those metals by weight avoid the extra metal tariffs. Industry and electrical grid equipment gets 15% through 2027. Products made abroad but entirely with American steel, aluminum, and copper get 10%. So it kind of makes you say, what's going on over here? And by the way, I mean, if y'all didn't know, today is National Burrito Day. But if you're like me and you're kind of lazy and you don't feel like folding it up and making it look all cute, you eat your burritos kind of like that, where they look like a taco. And if you kind of get my drift, some are seeing this move on metal tariffs as, well, I'll leave it to your imagination. But it also looks like simplification is kind of how it's being framed, or that the administration was getting enough pushback that the White House had to make it easier to administer. Then at the same time, we see tariffs being increased in a certain area. So there's this threatening of branded pharmaceuticals with tariffs as high as 100% unless these drug makers commit to US manufacturing or pricing deals with the US. So the message is not exactly pro business certainty, which that may help a little bit politically, but it doesn't help with planning easier for companies who are already dealing with war risk and energy volatility and wanting the rates higher because borrowing money's still pretty expensive as prices are expensive due to inflation over the past decade, softening demand, the growing list of all of the other concerns out there. And that brings us back to oil. So the common narrative right now is that crude around this $110 per barrel hurts. But the market expects that to fade somehow. But the danger is not just the level of oil, like the price per barrel, it's also the timing, how long it takes for this. Is it going to be short lived or temporary, like markets are thinking, or is this going to be spread out over a couple more weeks or a couple more months or even years? And how long can they withstand that? So, this shock is hitting an economy where job creation has already cooled and sentiment is already depressed and spending is increasingly concentrated at the top. That's that K shaped economy. Manufacturing employment is already shrinking. Cost pass through is already beginning in plain sight, and people feel those changes. It's eating them up in their wallets and pocketbooks, and it's checkbooks is what they call them. What's a check? So then they feel it when delivery costs rise and when fuel eats into their weekly budget, when hiring gets narrower, when layoffs cluster into sectors that used to feel secure. It starts raising these red flags out there. Yeah, the economy can still print decent retail sales data numbers and stable claims as far as jobless claims go for a while at least, but that doesn't mean the foundation is strong out there. It may just mean that this shock that we're kind of witnessing arrived before the weakness became obvious.